be group writable so that people can overwrite other people's work. So basically, if somebody started something, didn't configure it very well, but hasn't touched it in a long time, that somebody else can go inside and, for example, change the packages in the Python installation there, for example. So potentially we haven't fully decided yet whether we're going to go for group writable in the develop stage, but I think we probably will. We're thinking about using read-only in the production stages so that people can't overwrite stuff. Our software is all built in RAM, and then we also decide on exactly where things are going to get installed, and that depends on which stage you have loaded at the time. In terms of resolving dependencies, there's logic there based on the stage as well. So you have different repositories. Each stage has its own easy config repository. So you have logic inside based on how things will get resolved, and that's all done by EasyBuild Robot. We also configure things for minus jobs so that you can submit builds to the back end. And then everything related to modules, what module syntax we're going to use, what tool and everything, that's all inside. And also our licenses. We also have restrictions. Basically, we're going to introduce some more restrictions on people, on the developers, on where they can do things and at what stage. And the typical issues that we get back from our group, our software group, is that EasyBuild is not that easy, and that there's a learning curve involved for them. I mean, the thing about it is that when they come in and ask us a question, we're pretty quick because we use it every day. But for them, there seems to be quite a bit of overhead. We have the software group probably has 20 people inside, and most of them will touch EasyBuild maybe once or twice in a year when they have to. And so for them, things can be a little bit difficult because there is a bit of overhead involved. We're the ones with the knowledge, so myself and Damien, we're the ones with the knowledge, so they typically come and ask us to do things. Another thing that we get frequently is that there's failed builds, have to be restarted from scratch. We don't get it so often, but we get it from some people, and particularly from the OpenFOAM guy. So the problem with OpenFOAM is it takes like hours to build it. So when he has one small little tiny thing that he wants to change at the end, he has to restart from scratch and wait 3 or 4 hours for it to complete. But that's the only person where there's not really much we can do, right? Because it's built in the installation directory and everything. It's a bit of a complicated beast. And then we frequently get people who come along and say that such and such software doesn't fit the EasyBuild model, which we all know is not true because it's not really a concrete model. If you can edit the file and have to run a command to install it, then it fits the model, right? So, but people just don't want to learn how to use EasyBuild. They're not really, they just want to do things the way they always did them, which is, yeah, you always get this kind of inertia, right? So we fight that as much as we can. And then usually people are surprised that actually a lot of the work has already been done by somebody else. So the person who used to maintain NetCDF and HDF5 on our systems doesn't really do any work anymore related to this stuff. Typically the stuff is coming from somebody else, which is useful for them. The other complaint that we might get is that there's no place for static installations when we have stages. So basically every time we move to a new view, everybody has to install whatever software they're responsible for, has to be in place in the new installation, so they have to install it. We would say to them that that's not actually true. If you had a working easy config, and there's a user that we have that myself and Damien share called swmanage. So by default, we will update the new stage with stuff that works. So that's not really true either. But their installation has to be within EasyBuild, and if it is, we should be able to reproduce it. So if we can't reproduce it, then there's a problem in either the easy config, or they haven't actually been using this EasyBuild at all and have just like created a module and put it in the right place. And the other question sometimes we get is about long-term software support. So some people come to us and say that they want to use the same executable for 3 years over the entire lifetime of their project. So what about them? And then I tell them that they need to use the extended view, and then they can always go backwards. So they can keep using the same stage as long as it's around. But I mean, we haven't deleted one yet, but we probably will at some stage. But within a 3 year, I imagine 3 years is probably the maximum. I mean, the machine only has a lifetime of about 5 anyway. So, and then one of the issues that we have for other people is in terms of software responsibility, testing and maintenance. So, as regards responsibility, one of the things that EasyBuild has brought is put a lot of the responsibility back on us as the two main people who manage EasyBuild. So people typically, now if a question comes into the ticket system about any software, they just immediately fork it off to us, even though many people could actually resolve this stuff themselves. So kind of this, we don't really want to centralize the workload. So one of the things we're trying to do is distribute this task back out a little bit more. We also want to make people a bit more responsible for testing. So aside from the sanity checks that exist in an EasyBuild environment, we don't do any tests on any of the software that we install typically. So if it builds and it passes sanity check, we make it available. That doesn't mean we've actually checked it. And so somebody should be responsible, especially if we say as a center that we support this software, somebody should actually be testing it to make sure the functionality is there. And then in terms of maintenance, what I really mean by maintenance is that having somebody to contact. And so, for example, a particular module within some piece of code like Abinit or something like that isn't available, somebody else needs to build that in or enable that module and recreate that software. And that kind of support doesn't really exist in our current view, and it's something that we want to work on.
Now, with respect to the testing, do you think there's room for an easy test community to collaborate on this stuff as well? Like having a central repository where you define how a particular software package is tested and you have small test cases that you can run, and if all of these pass, then the installation is typically okay.
I mean, I think it would be great if something like that exists. I don't know, it might be that easy to get the manpower to actually do it.
My problem with this one, that for example, when I was doing a newcam, I know lots about newcam because I used to use it, and I made the tests and everything. Some of them fails because they should fail or something like that. But the problem is that it's not easy. And then in newcam they provide you some tests, but you have scientific software which has so many aspects and they don't provide any kind of testing or whatever. Release the software, run it as it is. And other software, then there's lots of modules, for example, they give you lots of tests and then you can run all the tests, which might take days, even if you have big clusters. You can do it or not. I think it's not easy. What I say that the user should test it, and I'm always telling them that you should make some tests for yourself and then be sure that it's working fine. And this is what I was discussed lately with Kenneth, that we figured out that some of the BLAST doesn't work well with Intel compiler. So when you compile with Intel, the BLAST, and then you use it, I don't remember which was one, I think it's the BLAST N or BLAST X, I don't know what was it. It doesn't work, it gives stupid results, although it passes all the tests and then the file is there and everything, but just the result is, and especially it's true with Fortran. If you do with Fortran, it's many times it compiles, but when it compiles with Fortran, you cannot be sure that actually it gives the right answer what you program, because Fortran is quite.
I mean, there is this benchmarking framework that we have at JSC, and there's been some collaboration between Kenneth and this Jube environment as well. So potentially you can do, I mean, that would allow you to do some performance tests and things like that.
And not just the performance, the problem is sometimes the answer.
Yeah. But that's also what I say. I mean, for us, the amount of software that is on the system at the moment, there's no way we can have a handle on it.
That's what I'm saying, that the user should test themselves. So when I say that, okay, we install the program, but you have to make sure, because we cannot make sure because we are not experts in the field. I mean, some field maybe yes, but you cannot be expert in all the fields. The user should know that if they got an answer, this makes sense or not.
Yeah. Maybe just allow users to use different scenarios for the software and give them the tools to test software by themselves. So you prepare some framework, some interface where users can put some input and compare outputs with different inputs and compare outputs.
Yeah.
So they can test. Okay, this scenario is okay, but this is even better. So they can provide you feedback.
That's what Jube does. So basically, that's the kind of framework that Jube provides. But I agree with you. I don't think, in reality, I don't think this will actually happen because it's extra effort and.
When I was doing my scientific work, I have a software which has, I don't know, 1 zillion functionality, and then I was always wanted to work the fastest, and then if some of the tests fail, which I don't use it, I don't care. So it also depends on if you have a really large software. It's typical example, the CP2K, I don't know how many people uses that one. In CP2, you can see every nightly builds that how many of the tests failed, even for them. And they just don't care, they just go further because they don't care if it's failed here and there, because you might not need that functionality. And as the same happens, I mean, you have to make sure that the users know that they have the responsibility to test the functionality what they want to use. It's true for the OpenFOAM as well.
And the one issue we're looking at going forward, for example, the OpenFOAM issue was kind of interesting because we ran into something recently with OpenFOAM. So it's one of the dependencies is I can't remember, but basically there's some logic in the easy block that if you're using Intel compilers, you don't turn on SMP, but if you aren't, you do, right? And so that's a problem, right? That basically doesn't work with OpenFOAM, and it's not configurable. So if you blindly install it, everything it will build fine, but then at runtime you get a threaded MPI environment from the dependency that doesn't work with OpenFOAM, so it's broken.
You can, for example, for OpenFOAM, take a small test example, just see if it works.
Yeah, but
OpenFOAM is huge.
But that's what I say, that for example, that if you want to test the whole OpenFOAM, you might have to run
that's great, but we can run, but even OpenFOAM has many executables, but we can take one and just see if it does what we do think it does. There's no guarantee that the whole thing works.
One of the things that I'm thinking about, in particular in this case, is we have GPUs, right? So you can build software, you can think you've built in GPU support, doesn't mean it works or is even there, right? So just because you've done something doesn't mean it's actually in the final executable. So how do you actually check it? The only way to check that is to try and run it. And nobody's doing that. I mean, you can provide a ton of software that we think is GPU enabled, and it's not, right? And especially with MPI being GPU aware and this direct copy stuff. How do you check that, right? How do you check it's actually being used? There's a load of performance considerations there that are a pain, and especially if you can't even run a test, well, what can you do? Huh? But that's why, in terms of responsibility, things get a bit hairy, right? Who's going to do that?
Push it back to the users.
Yeah, for example, CP2K and Gaussian, we run the direct tests, but they have to check if the output makes sense.
Adam, thinking about that too, I recall 2 years ago I received at some point an issue, quantum expression version black, the one we have in EasyBuild actually, is broken in terms of physics. What do you do about that?
Yeah, but this is what I say, that many times it happens that you just compile it, especially with quantum espresso, which large portion of the code is Fortran, and with Fortran can anything happen. It's Fortran, yes, it compiles, no errors, nothing, it looks fine. When you run a computation, and if you know what should come out, you see that it's bullshit, it doesn't match, it's somehow something went wrong, especially with iterative solutions and these kind of things. Just get away for a while and hope, you figure out that this particular code shouldn't be compiled with -03, only with -01, if you want to dig in, but nobody has the time for that.
Yeah, but actually describing here is a case that the build process has been followed correctly. The binary that comes out is more or less the one that not more or less, is the one that the upstream developers meant, but it's actually the release from upstream that has a problem. So that is really a domain expertise issue and can only be handled if the same guys that produce the software actually have the appropriate tests embedded in it to detect for that kind of failure mode. There is no other way. Because even the end user is actually on a learning side. It's actually the upstream guys that really have to fix that.
Yep.
That's just the software developers didn't take into account something. Like in CP2K, many times some of the nightly builds, they make something wrong and they're not able to reproduce the results what they get. But I know that in the biochemistry, because I used to work in the field of chemistry, and WASP probably heard about it because everybody has to compile it. And then if you, for example, do the same calculation WASP 4 and WASP 5, you can get a completely different result. And according to the developers of WASP, it's completely normal. So it's also, I mean...
I mean, that's the thing. If you see a failing test, you assume it's some kind of a failure, right? To somebody else, it means nothing.
So, for example, when you calculate the energy of a system and you have some minor difference, and then it depends on how you define the minor difference. And some people, especially in the solid state physics and biology, this minor difference is much larger than somebody in the field of physics, and then they just don't care. Not to mention that we have also problems that if you compile the program in different architectures, you will get different codes. And there's nothing to do. Even if you use the slightest, even if you use exactly the same method what the developer said, and then if you ask them, they say, yeah, that's normal, we don't care about it, this minor differences, so it's always hard. So I will push back to the users.
Yeah. But in terms of, also in terms of distributing the workload, we try and have people who are responsible, who have some domain knowledge, right? So we don't have the domain knowledge in a lot of places, but we do have a large group, we have 20 people, right? So we can distribute some of the workload. But then it comes down to, what do we actually support? What do we support directly? What do we say we actually support this software, and what are just happen to be there because they're dependencies of something that we support? So what we're moving to now is having our own golden EasyBuild repo, which is our priority branch, basically the stuff that will go into production. And now what I'm moving towards is forcing people to only do development in the develop stage, and then we'll use this new functionality of EasyBuild for our own golden repository to force people to push up to the golden to our golden repo from there, and then we'll do a code review there. So software managed, that's myself and Damien. This user will review what they're trying to do, and then we discuss with them and accept it into the repo. And yeah, anything that's only the stuff that's in the golden repo goes into production, and we can always then retire stuff from there and keep a catalog of all the legacy software that we've had in various stages. We probably want to distinguish between the supported software that we have, where we have actual people who say they support this stuff, and the dependencies of that software. You might even do the dependencies at two different levels, in the sense that we have the idea of hidden dependencies. Do we want to hide all dependency modules by default? Probably not, right? I mean, CMake is a dependency, but we won't have somebody who supports it explicitly, but we don't want to hide it, obviously, because a lot of people will use it. So there's probably two different categories there. We want to try and keep the module view pretty clean, so it's something we're thinking about. In terms of supported stuff, we also want to push people to actively look for updates to the supported software. So they shouldn't just sit on their laurels with a particular version, but even if people have not asked for it, they should try and go looking for updates and get them working. What we also want people to do is to put some standards into our module files. This is again relevant really to supported software. So we should have a maintainer in there, we should have an email contact for that maintainer. There should be some information about the installation itself, what modules, for example, were installed with the installation, what compiler options were used, and some other information that might be useful to an end user in terms of especially figuring out a problem, or thinking that the optimization wasn't enough, something like that. We should also give some usage information in there. How do you actually use this in terms of the application itself? So a bit more detailed information, or at least give them a proper links to research links about how to use things. And what else, I don't know. There might be more stuff. We had a discussion about this in general within EasyBuild as regards like some kind of template that we could have within easy configs for this type of stuff.
We ought to talk about that, what we do, just in case there's anything we do you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, right? So I think it's worth having a discussion about, or we will do it anyway ourselves. It's just a bit tedious to support at the moment in EasyBuild. So what have we actually contributed back? I only kind of pulled stuff out of my head last night a little bit with the concept behind GCC Core. We did the minimal toolchain stuff as well. Recently we did this module naming scheme, independent installations. That's pretty useful basically. So it means that you can try out different naming schemes without having to reinstall software. So up until then, if you change your naming scheme, you have to rebuild all the software. With this independent mode, you don't have to do that anymore. So you can just do ---- module only and try a whole new, you can try, for example, a hierarchy, or you can go back to the standard mode. You can have them all living side by side, which is maybe something that people might want to do. It's useful, especially in the case where you might want to you might have different classes of users. I might want to only expose certain things to them, so you get to play with these things, and it's much easier to play with. We also recently did the default optimization within EasyBuild is -02, so we made that configurable. So now that potentially we can bump it to 03, which is probably what we will try. And the thing with that is if you do get fails, you can always go to easy config and lower it down.
My question is it really worth to do it from 02, 03?
Why not, or why wouldn't it be worth it?
Because I know that I tested some codes and then actually 03 not necessarily faster than 02 in many cases. I mean, you cannot predict it. So when you move from 02 to 03, that is like, for example, you move from 01 to 02, it's not necessarily true that the code itself is faster. When you move from 02 to 03, it's not necessarily faster, sometimes even slower.
So the reason...
But it depends on the software.
Yeah, it depends on the software. The reason that we did it is because I had somebody who came to me and said that if I do -03, it's like twice as fast. So for us, that's a lot of cycles.
You have to put into the easy config, not change the default. I don't know. I mean,
we could test it out. So yeah, that depends, right?
Well,
so
I did in the past in compilations, but part of the code was compiled with GCC, part of them was Intel, because that gives the overall the fastest code, but that makes some time as well. So, but I don't see that. Well, I don't mind. I'm just saying that 03 not necessarily fast at all the cases. Depends on the software.
Yeah. So my problem is that people don't try things out, right? So people take something from the EasyBuild repository. It builds, that's fine, and they forget about it, right? But they never actually try these things about bumping the optimization, and especially for our supported software, people don't actually try these things. They're not even aware of what the options are for the tool chains. How do I change the optimization? How do I change the precision level? Like so, and it's not really documented that well, to be honest. It's not documented at all, I think, right?
You have the code, so you can check it.
Yeah, but that's what I've done to people. I've said, look in this file and look in that file, and there are other options.
There's no good documentation. The extended dry run helps because you can tweak toolchain options and you can see what $C flags will be set to. So it gives you some transparency, but yeah, we could do better.
Yeah, so, and maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I haven't done it yet. I made it possible.
Yeah.
And then I haven't decided whether it's a good idea.
I think
decided whether it's a good idea or not.
And then, it also depends. I didn't say that. But, you see, it's probably not a big problem with C++. But when you go to Fortran, then you have to really think about it.
Yeah.
Because the problem is that when you change Fortran from 02 to 03, you have a pretty good chance that, so if you see that, for example, a scientific software which is 100,000 lines and written in Fortran, you see that in the makefile they put lots of effort in it, and then they have different modules or whatever, files or subroutines or whatever, and they use different optimization level for some of them. And this is the reason when you change everything in Fortran to 03, then might be catastrophic consequences. So the Fortran, I think, is much more sensitive to the optimization level. And then it's typically when you get something with 02, it works, you get the right result. When you optimize with 03, you compile something, no error messages, everything is fine, but when you run, you get stupid results.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm just saying, that in Fortran I would be more...
It goes back to the testing. Yeah. If we bump to -03 by default and you don't test, then because -02 is certainly getting the most testing. I mean,
Yeah, maybe it's a bad idea. I haven't actually done it yet.
No, but I mean, just maybe C will not change too much, but in Fortran you have to be. So that's my problem. You should test if it's 03 in Fortran instead of 02. The problem is that Fortran makes, it's what I say, the Fortran always sacrifices everything on the speed, the altar of speed. And then it does things Fortran doesn't do. For example, when you use 03, they don't do range checks. For example, if you have an array and then you write higher number of the array that you defined actually the array itself, it's possible that you rewrite the code itself. So the Fortran doesn't prevent the compiled code to overwrite actually using variables and arrays and everything to the code region. It doesn't prevent, it doesn't check. If you define a certain array and then you put -10 or -15, as an element and not defined in when you made the Fortran array, then it writes out of the region, and it can be code, it can be other. So this is why I think it's a better idea to make. I mean, C it's less problematic because C is usually a bit slower, but it makes less checks, but makes much more checks. Fortran doesn't check anything. Well, of course, it depends on which Fortran is. Anyway.
And yeah, last one we contributed bug fixes and some support back as well. What do we worry about these days? This is my last slide, I think. We worry a little bit about environment explosions. So we have an awful lot of modules now, and some of the resource managers have a limit on what you can export to the jobs. It's like 4,000 characters or something. So it's something you have to be a little bit careful about, or at least consider that this could be an issue. And our pathing stuff might solve that potential problem, which is one of the reasons we thought maybe it's a good idea. We have the issue with dependencies creating clutter in our module view. So we have the software we're supporting and interested in, or the software that we're interested in as well, and then we have lots of dependencies floating around that maybe people really don't want to see. So we hide them, but in general, what's a good approach? I mean, that's the way we do things at the moment, is we just hide things. So we use the environment variable actually. We tend not to use the hidden dependency within the easy configs, or I'm moving away from it because the environment variable does a much better job actually, and it's much more straightforward. The environment variable always catches things, even tool chains, but within the easy configs it doesn't. And then version minimization as well, so we try not to have lots of different versions of the same software floating around in the default view, because that can cause problems with people, especially with LMOD. It swaps them out automatically, so they can easily swap a different version of HDF5, which breaks something else.
You can change that. You can configure LMOD not to swap.
I don't know if I really want to do that though.
Well,
we tested it.
no, it's not, well, the pin version thing only works for collections. Oh, you can also turn it so it doesn't auto swap, yes.
We were testing this week.
Yeah, you can do that too. You
But
can tell
if
it
you're-
not to auto swap.
Yeah. But if you're in a hierarchy, you sometimes you want it, sometimes you don't.
Right.
If you're well, no, you can disable auto swap on load, but you can still swap things, right? If you do module swap, it will still swap.
Yes,
So
because it won't, yeah.
But what would happen? What would happen if you changed compiler or NPI implementation? Then it wouldn't.
when you swap, then you do module swap. That's okay. But you can tell LWAT if I do module load HDF5 1.8 and 1.9 is loaded, don't swap it.
So what would happen if I have two MPI implementations in the same family and I say load the other implementation? Is that translated into a swap then, or?
If you, well, it depends on how you've set it up. I mean, if you switch from in Vapage 2.1 to 2.2 in our site, it wouldn't do anything. Because we don't, we say that, or 2.2.1, anyway, we use the 2-digit rule so that if we just change them, if it's like the third digit, we don't, it's still gonna find the same version.
But let's say an Intel MPI and a different MPI implementation. Right? They're in the same family.
Then you gotta swap.
Then that's translated.
But I don't know how this works with this, I've forgotten the details of this, how this what we implemented was, if the name is the same, don't auto swap it out. Or we'll talk about it.
And then we worry specifically about the GPU enabled stuff. So that's where we are at the moment. We got our GPUs installed in November. So we have the development utilities. That's fairly straightforward to make available for people. But now we'd actually like to support GPUs in some of our applications as well. And yeah, I worry a little bit about whether, even if we manage to build stuff with it, whether it really works. I don't know. And I worry about inode. We use a lot of inodes. We have limitations on the amount we can use, and I had to bump that limit a couple of times already. So we have a lot of files.
Is that just because you have so many installations?
Yeah.
You have too much overflow.
That's it? Any more questions or anything I didn't touch or anything?
There's a question on IRC. So Robin Allen is already awake. So he was asking if EasyBuild has made your team or JSC more efficient.
I don't know if I'm the right one to ask, because I haven't been around forever. I know we work in a different way now, and I think it made the potential workload with the new cluster a lot more manageable. So with our old cluster system, with Europa, the predecessor, there was only one MPI implementation, just the Power Station MPI, and everyone was encouraged to use the Intel compiler. So in the EasyBuild speak, then that's one tool chain, right? So, and then people paid an awful lot less attention to proper dependencies and things like that, and interdependencies and awareness about what could potentially break something else. So, because I still see, like, so we have two systems, right? So we have our cluster system and we have the BlueGeneQ system. And on the BlueGeneQ, we still use the old method, essentially, which is somebody just builds the software, makes a module file for it, and then makes it available. And the problem comes when there's dependencies between things. Something gets bumped or somewhere, or something gets changed or reconfigured or something. Nobody updates the other tools, and then they pull in, even if it's the same version number, it doesn't work anymore. Or on a BlueGeneQ, they change the compiler, they change something, and it's a big problem because you have to recompile the software, nobody actually does it. And then you don't even know about it until the user finally complains about it, right? So, yeah, it's in that sense. And nobody can well, of course, and the big issue is that the only person who can do that rebuild is the person who did it initially, because they're the ones who own it, or they're the ones who only know how to do it, specifically for that system. So at least on EasyBuild, the idea is that somebody else could take over that workload. That at least you could pass the baton in a more straightforward way. Previously, that was like impossible. It's impossible. I mean, you just have to start from scratch. That's what was done.
Another question he has is whether you feel you're getting good return on your time investment and contributing back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I think about my time. I think about other people's. It's kind of what would be interesting to study is the amount of tickets that we get for our system. Because it's relatively new, right? It only got installed last year. We don't get that many support tickets really. We get people asking for new Python module or new this and that. We don't get many tickets of people with problems with the software that we already have. All they want is newer stuff, right? So.
And is it different from before?
Well, potentially yes, but also we have much more software than we used to have, right? So we're already we've already solved people's problems before they have them. People, the first thing they will ask is like, I don't see any software, what's the problem? And then you have to point them to the page that explains that we have a hierarchy and you have to do this, that, to actually see all the software that's available. Or just tell them how to use the spider command and then they just find stuff. I think yes. And then, obviously a lot of the things that we contribute back are things that we're interested in. Yeah. We do them because we want them. Yeah.
But what I have found out is that you basically spend more quality time with users, especially in the sense that I have been recently surprised at times that basically the people I have lunch with, they actually have championed using the tool without ever telling me. So that's a sign that things are basically working, right? Yeah.
And we get compliments sometimes about like how easy it is to use our system, right? Some guy was in LRZ and he said he came here and within like an hour or two we had this whole thing compiled and he was really like, oh, that was super easy. But it's a popular system. The Eureka it's full these days, right? Everybody likes using it. It's a nice big cluster and it has plenty of power.
And lots of stuff just available. Yeah.
But we're not sysadmins, and we're not that careful about how we do, or I'm not that careful about how we do things, right? So this stage thing, we force things a little bit, like we force version bumps and everything. We don't really take care if it could potentially break other things. We're not the type of careful that
It's impossible to check. Sometimes breaks, sometimes not. So if you want to be sure that is everything using always the same version, same compiler, then you get the same results. But as I told, we had in the past when we just simply get a new architecture, we use exactly the same software as compiled, and you get different result. It can happen still. So the problem is that and this is what I said, that I think many responsibility have to push back to the users. So okay, you provide the software, but as long as it doesn't come in a binary format, it's the same. So if you are a user, you have to do it yourself. You can follow what is written down, maybe a bit slow, whatever, in the safe side. But then you have to check yourself. You do exactly the same. Because if you install a binary, it should work. But if it's not a binary, if it's something even the user does itself to compile something on the source, you cannot be sure that the result, what he gets running the analysis or software or whatever, is good. And this is what I'm saying, that we do them the compilation, but we have to push back the responsibility to them to check whether the answer they get is good or not. And then you have to make it sure. So I mean, it's impossible, yeah.
May I ask how many people are working on software stack in JSC?
I mean, how many people do it every day? 2. How many people within the software group? There's probably like the order of 20.
But the 2, what do you mean? Did only work with software, or you have other responsibilities as well?
I meant the preparation software for users.
So you mean EasyBuild stuff, or you mean
EasyBuild stuff and stuff around, let's say, I don't know.
So there's 2 different levels, right? So we manage like the module environment, so anything that goes into the module environment, right? So that's what we do. But then in terms of the actual like the sysadministration, you mean sysadmin stuff as well?
System administration, no, that's a different task. I meant
so
some user wants to install this software, so how many people work on
So in our overall user support, I think we have like 14 people who answer tickets or something like that now. On that direct line of user support, but the people who work with EasyBuild every day are really the two. People come to us with their EasyBuild questions, right? And then usually we don't really need to bother the other people, the software people, too much. Like they all do other things, right? So the two of us at the moment are dedicated to this task for the most part. But other people only do it on an as-needed basis, and usually it's in a lot of times it's not needed, a couple of times a year maybe. So really it's like would you say 2 people full time, or is that's not really?
Two people full time? I'm not sure full time would be.
No, probably not, right? It's like one full-time person then, really, maybe. So the thing is that at the moment, so I'm on a down ramping a little bit because I'm starting a new project myself, and Damien is on an up ramp, and so the 2 of us are overlapping, and we'll always overlap. But there's only one real core person who's centrally responsible, I guess, at any one time.
And did you have some? I realize you have some side modification for of EasyBuild, golden image.
It's not really a modification. We just have our own repository, for easy configs. So because especially because we have our own tool chain, so we have this particular MPI implementation and everything. Now the problem is that that's part of the reason that I wanted the minimal toolchain stuff, because that should make my life a little bit easier. Because once we have minimal toolchains, we have the same compilers as everyone else, right? So as long as we can push a lot of software that is common to everybody down to the compiler level, it leaves a lot less for us to maintain at a higher level. So like because we had our own tool chains. And typically, like I don't know what it's been like for you, but normally you don't list the tool chain of the dependency, right? You just leave everything at the high level, which is, I'm guessing most people do it like that, or have done it like.
So easy and.
Yeah, it's just easy, and it'll work, right? It'll work great. But then when you want to use a different one,
the hierarchy it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we noticed the try toolchain thing is, it's not broken, but it could be better.
Yeah, but that's, for example, my biggest problem, for example, if I'm trying to do something to try toolchain, and then I already have something, for example, as a module installed, it still try to
No, it should.
No, I'm stupid. If you have already have the, no, it's not.
Easy config. Yes.
If you have the easy config, it doesn't.
That's a bug. You can fix that tomorrow. Or this afternoon. No, but that's a bug. It should do that. That's right.
Yeah, it's fairly easy
Ah,
fixes
it's
as
a
well,
problem.
right?
So try to change robot. And then,
Fix up the tweaked ones, even though you have that. It's a one-line fix. I can show you what.
How is it one-line fix? It's not that easy, right?
The try toolchain thing.
The fix for it, so that it.
So the issue he was saying is that if you do try toolchain, it generates easy configs for all dependencies, even though the easy config is already there.
Yeah, I know.
Check for that. It's a one-line fix because what it does now, if you do try toolchain, it will create this temporary directory with all the tweaked easy configs in it, and it puts it first in the robot path. What it actually should do, it should last in the robot path. So the other stuff has preference.
it should be perfect.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to be a little bit. You have to be a little bit careful, right? Because whatever was on the command line has to come first, but everything else has to come last.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I mean, if I want this particular thing, if I put this easy config on the command line, that's the one that I want, right?
Yeah.
I do it on purpose. I don't do it. You know. If I listed it
It's a little
explicitly,
bit weird that you try toolchain with a different easy config, even though a matching one is already there.
I know, but it could happen, right?
You're right. Yeah.
I mean, it should be.
You could have a degree.
The dependent. It should be split.
Last question, I'm not sure because we are not using currently a mode. Stages are, this is something...
No, and that's just something we did internally. So that's just how we manage.
It's basically separate module tweaks.
Yeah.
But that's normally you can do it with
You can do it with Tickle as well.
So normally we also do.
Oh yeah. You could do it anyway.
Normally
It's
we
just-
do the same as well. I mean, when we install something, we agreed in the JSC community that we do put everything into the toolchain main version directory. Normally, what you give as a pass. Normally we get everything, but we could shift or just stay there. And
Yep.
So normally we list everything like you would get with the extended one. But
Yeah.
normally you can change just simply the link, sim link, or the module path, and then you change this.
The one caveat for this is related to Spider. So we had to modify a little bit. You remember this thing with the DBT?
Yeah, I remember talking to you about it. Remember we did something, but I don't remember what the thing.
I disabled it, right? So DBT causes a problem in the cache, basically.
Oh,
So
yeah.
When you have this stages, when you have this kind of a view of stages, Spider reports everything, even if you can't see it, if you have this DBT available.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I start the cache from the lowest possible level, it will cache everything, right? And Spider will report on things even if you can't see it. So even if you can't actually load it. And so with DBT, but I don't know why that is.
Yeah. It's complicated. I don't remember the details now.
But you can get around it. So if anyone happens to run into that problem, I have a solution.
I have two comments or questions. So one thing is that you mentioned that, well, we have our own MPI implementation. I'm wondering if it makes sense to push that upstream, because that's open source. In principle, everyone can use it.
It is there, but you should. I mean, it's there already. We have it. It is upstream. Not a recent version.
The
or
API
anything,
itself is there.
Yeah. The thing is, people should probably know a little bit more about how it works because it's a little bit different, right? So you have to have it. You need to make it actually work. You need
like a daemon running or something.
Exactly, right. So there has to be a daemon on all the nodes. So it's implementing it requires system.
So one thing I was thinking about is why do we now have this separate repository, separate golden thing? Well, one thing we could do is you could, especially with UPR, it's trivial. You could tell people to just contribute in the central repository, but we can give you merge rights for those pull requests. So I don't even intervene. and then everything goes central. Of course.
I mean, the thing about this, you might have you might want to do particular things. You might want to modify things that are in the main repo for some reason, right? Like they're only templates, right? GCC 3530 is a template, right?
Yeah.
In my GCC 5.3, I want to use GCC Core 493 underneath, right? So I have to make that work somehow, right?
Okay.
That's
for those it won't work, but maybe for the others, even though the toolchain is sort of specific to your site, and I don't think that's actually true, but other sites may be using PowerStation as well, and are using it.
Oh yeah, I mean I can do it. What I basically want to do is, if we make a change to GCC 5.3, I push that into our golden repo, and that gets picked up first, right? Yeah. So it goes at the beginning of. So that's the one that we use.
Yeah.
That's what.
For other stuff, maybe we should just try and do it centrally, and we just give you merge right there, and with the agreement that we only merge that stuff. Only for that toolchain you're using, you're responsible for those pull requests, and I don't even look at it. Yeah, Jenkins has to pass and maybe agree that there's a test report from your system, but other than that.
But this should be a solution with the fact. Is it with config or
The fat configs are a whole, I don't know what's going to happen. We'll have to find something that works.
Because normally that should be
There it should be somewhere there's a list of toolchains and then just add another toolchain. That's the idea. In practice, it's not going to work for that for many things. Of course not. But yeah,
but in long term, this should be a kind of solution for this kind of problems.
Yeah.
Because, for example, when you know that you're using the same family, then probably should. It's like when you change from GCC 4.8 to 4.9, it's 99% you assume that it would work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then in your case, it's exactly the same, but just the MPI is a bit different for him.
But it's still MPage, right? It's still MPage based, so
this is what I said, that at the end, it should be a good chance that it would work with a rather.
Well, the reason why I was saying that is if we have something, some easy config, some support package that is installing our system, but it's not upstream, it's a pity that we've done some work that somebody could benefit from it, maybe, and they have to do it again from scratch. So that's, I mean, don't keep things from being pushed into the community just because it's a different toolchain. I think that would be, something really positive.
Yeah.
Feel free to jump on that.
All right. That you said out.
Resources are limited, isn't it?
And then the other thing, well, that was about the default optimization level. Doesn't make sense, and that's maybe a question for everyone. Doesn't make sense to have different optimization level or different options depending on the language.
Well, yes, it's possible. I think it's already done in this way.
And the toolchains.
It's really done.
Because I just said that, for example, in GCC, I'm quite sure it will not cause too big problems, but G4 it might cause. And then if I go to, for example, PGI or whatever, or I don't know anybody use, because normally with the PGI and the Intel and the GCC, you have only, well, let's say 3 levels. Well, we have some exotic one as well. But if somebody using the XLC or something like that, you have 5 levels. So
it's not possible, right?
I think it's defined by you have different default optimization for C++. C.
Well, not really. You have the default optimization level is picked in one place, and then it is added to C flags, CXX flags, F flags, but it all comes from the same place. But you can make it smarter to make it language specific.
Yeah, so that's what my question was towards that, because that's what I thought, that there's a default optimization level that it's added to C flags and FC flags and all that, maybe makes sense.
XLC, for example, is used for...
Yeah, but for different compilers, you can use a different default optimization. The default is the same for C flags, F flags, right now, you can change.
For me, auto is fine.
But like for them, I mean, getting more control or more easy control over which optimization flags are used would be very...
I mean, ideally, the people who install the software actually try these things out. The problem is in practice they don't do it.
You should have something like -F flags. You can just use this and don't your toolchain option magic and don't care about it. So you get
I don't know if I really want that.
Well, just for testing, it would be useful. Like, what happens if I add this extra flag?